Hello everyone and welcome to the Virtual Factula. This video is inspired by Ignaz's HEMA in Combat series, which is a series of videos that takes sparring exchanges and then tries to determine their relation to the historical fight books. I think this is a very interesting approach because it is less normative than going from technique and then into sparring. So think of it like this: if you practice a technique a lot and then try to make it work in sparring, that creates a bit of a different understanding of how it works than when you just go and spar and then let the techniques happen and then analyze afterwards what these techniques are and what their relation to fight books is. It's a very interesting exercise. So you try to, for instance, get an idea of what these techniques from, for instance, von Danzig's or Leckerchner's fight book look like when they're not performed as part of a scripted sequence like the Stücke are. And also it can tell us a few things about how these techniques change with the way that we nowadays do HEMA, with more protection and different goals and priorities. As such, I wanted to do this video inspired by this, taking some of the fencing exchanges from a class a few weeks back that I feel are kind of textbook or are very similar but slightly different from the stuff that we see in Leckerchner's fight book. I originally wanted to do a few shorts for this, and I still will because of the algorithm. But I also figured that it would be cool to try a little bit of a commentary with these exchanges, and then I realized, well, if I'm putting that much effort into it anyway, let's just make it a full video. So here it goes. Without further ado, let's have a look at the first exchange. In this first exchange, we immediately get into one of the things that make Messer fun: grappling. I try to account for the much greater length of Lars' sword by getting close quickly, but he beats me to the punch by stepping forward as well and trying to control my elbow. So far, it's an excellent job from him. To get myself out of this predicament, I need to control his Messer arm by clenching it under my left arm. Doing it this close to my opponent can be found in Leckerchner's manuscript in the Running Through or Durchlaufen chapter, but with my elbow blocked, I'm still kinda stuck. To get unstuck, I need to first use this counter to free the elbow. In the fight book, this piece ends with a good hit with the clip point, but here I am so close that that won't do much. I am now free though, so I can end this exchange. I choose to go down the Talhofer road, first slicing Lars through the mask and then thrusting from the low end position of this slice. Historically, this would have been considered a pretty violent and often somewhat unwanted solution, socially speaking, so I could also have followed Leckerchner by stepping in with my left leg instead of removing it. In a HEMA context, it is usually considered safer to hit with a weapon rather than throw someone, so that may explain why this is the solution that felt more natural to me in that moment. Here I'm fencing Michaela, who does a very nice textbook thing in this exchange. Coming into fencing, I attempt to strike her hand with a step back, which she handily avoids. Realizing that a direct attack from my left side will be a good idea to follow up on that, I cut from above. Misha then strikes the perfect instant counter in this situation, the Entrusthau from her left side. You'll notice that she also catches her forward momentum by going towards a grapple, just in case the first cut didn't land. All in all, this is very nice. Speaking of following momentum into a grapple, here the roles are reversed. I again try an Oberhau from my left side, hoping to establish a bind. This ends up being a bit more successful than I imagined, and I strike through. The edge is not really aligned too well here though, so I decide that it is necessary to at least control Misha's Messer arm. This piece from Leckerchner may start with blade contact on the other side, but the end position and mechanics are pretty much the same. It comes from the knife-taking or Messernehmen chapter, which includes all the many different ways to end a fight by controlling your opponent's weapon or arm, and I think in this sense tactically it's very appropriate here. This next exchange is all about that Zornhau. Starting it from steer might be a bit unorthodox, but it definitely works. That said, you will definitely notice a pretty big difference between this action here and the illustration that goes with it. And that is because the piece that it goes with consists of multiple steps, each of which is the appropriate reaction to your opponent's next action. Misha does only that first action though, so for me it is enough to cut that Zornhau and thrust with the point. Any follow-up at this point would only mean I lose control of her blade. This is a cheeky one, a stop thrust to the hand, known as the Storkschnabel or the stork's beak. I absolutely adore this technique, although you have to be a bit careful about knowing the flex of your blade and the quality of your opponent's gloves. You'll notice that I perform this thrust on a much more horizontal line than Lekujner's illustration shows. This is because in modern HEMA, people have more of a tendency to have their hands out in front when fencing. I find that actually makes it a lot easier to land the stork's beak as a result. Up next we have one from the chapter on drawing or Zucken. I initiate with a cut, but Peter makes a textbook parry with his messer extended to give him enough reach to work against me. I want to have none of that because I know he will kick my butt otherwise, so I pull back my cut before it connects and attack from above from the other side. I end up hitting Peter on the arm instead of the head as the illustration shows. I suspect this is partially because we're fencing with shorter messers, and also partially because I lean back a little bit. This next one shows one of the nicer compound attacks that Lekujner discusses in his fight book, the Vinker. I start by telegraphing a cut from my right shoulder, which turns into a short edge cut. This is also a false attack though, because I immediately move off to my left and continue the short edge cut underneath Peter's parry to come again with the short edge from my left side to his hand. Again, the fight book assumes a hit to the head, and again it may be because of the shorter blades, but I'm also considering the possibility that hand hits are much more common in modern fencing practice because of a combination of good hand protection and different attitudes to risk. A lot of people don't realize, looking at the messer, that it is an excellent thrusting weapon. These last exchanges should prove that point though. I begin this one by making a false attack in front of me, followed by what I think must be the half cuts that Lekujner mentions but never explains in his chapter on doorwechseln, or changing through. This half cut is basically an Oberhaupt cast into Langenort or long point. From there I move my body forward, but keeping my messer in the same place and dipping my point slightly. Peter now doesn't know on which side the thrust is going to come, so the end result is a double changing through with a long point thrust to the body. More doorwechseln here, but from two different setups. At first I have my left foot in front and my messer in long point. This is not optimal for reach of course, but if I manage to bait out Peter into cutting at my blade, I'm in the optimal position to change through and explode forward with both a step and then bring my right shoulder forward as well. Peter however is smart and does not trigger this trap. So I decided to shake things up a bit by using das Rad or the wheel. Basically that is a ridiculously big circular cut from below that changes through into a long point thrust if parried, and it does so very explosively. I very nearly do not get away with it because Peter counters with a long point stop thrust, but luckily for me it does not connect and I get to change through anyway. I do need to control his messer arm though, so I end up pressing his right wrist down with the strong of my messer, which is the Schnitt or the slice, which I then follow up with a winding thrust, pretty close to what Lekujner shows in this piece here. I do think that this exchange would have played out differently with longer messers, but the theory of following up a doorwechsel to Langenort with a Schnitt and then a Winden makes perfect theoretical sense, showing that it is important to not see the Stücke as disjointed techniques, but rather building blocks that can be combined. The last one is a masterclass in timing and distance management by Peter. I try the wheel again and I have to abort because Peter attempts to cut at my arm. I then try to clear some space by doing the same and end up in a very Meyer-esque position. Of course we can't have that, so I step in to prepare a thrust from Aber or the boar position. Peter spots the guard's change without an immediate threat coming from it, so he simply thrusts forward into long point, performing what is known as ansetzen or setting on. This technique isn't often understood very well as you need to understand the timing. It is not a simultaneous or indes attack, as that would be a double. Instead, Peter initiates his ansetzen before or vor my thrust commences, therefore landing before my thrust is a threat, giving him enough time to be safe after stabbing me in the face. It's excellent in its simplicity. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this somewhat deeper dive analyzing the sparring exchanges a little bit more than I normally do. If you like this sort of video, if you like messer content in general, there's 3 things you can do to support this channel. It's liking, leaving a comment, and subscribing to this channel. These are all free, don't take an awful lot of effort, and they really help out the channel. I try to focus on delivering quality, and unfortunately YouTube prefers quantity instead. So any sort of help these videos can get are much appreciated. That said, none of this would be possible without the generous support of the people who sponsor me on Patreon. So thank you very much for that. And for all of you, I hope to see you in the next video. And until then, okay doei.